The ship shook hard, and Commander Elena Vance grabbed the railing to keep herself from falling. The lights flickered twice, and then everything went dark. What happened? She shouted into the blackness, her voice steady even as alarm screamed all around her. Chirik, the insectoid engineer from the Valkyrie homeworld, clicked his mandibles in panic as he tried to read his console. His forearms moved fast across buttons that no longer responded to his touch. The engines are dead. Commander, he said, his voice shaking with fear. Something cut the main power lines and we are drifting toward the rift. Elena pushed herself toward the command center, using the walls to guide her through the darkness. She had spent her childhood in the mining tunnels of Europa, where light was a luxury and darkness was simply the way of life. The Korath Rift was the most dangerous place in the known galaxy. No ship had ever entered it and returned to tell the story. It was a massive hole in space itself, a wound in reality that pulled everything into its hungry mouth. Can we restore power? Elena asked. I am trying, Chirik answered, his clicks becoming faster as his stress increased. But someone sabotaged the core systems. This was not an accident. Thiessen, the aquatic diplomat from the water world of Mortha, floated in his mobility suit nearby. His large eyes glowed with a soft blue light that came from his species' natural bioluminescence. And right now that glow pulsed rapidly with his fear. We must send a distress signal, Thiessen said, his voice bubbling through the translator. The Galactic Concord will send help. Our communications are dead too, Elena replied, her mind already racing through options. Whoever did this wanted to make sure we could not call for rescue. The ship lurched again. And this time, Elena felt the pull in her stomach. They were accelerating toward the rift, caught in its gravitational grip like a small fish being pulled into the mouth of a whalerex. The crystalline scientist from the Lorien Collective made a sound like breaking glass. It was the Lorien expression of absolute terror, Commander, Orvex said, his body flickering with inner light as his emotions ran wild. The rift is pulling us in. At current speed, we will cross the event horizon in less than 10 minutes. Elena looked at her crew. She could barely see them in the darkness, but she could feel their fear. It filled the room like a thick fog. The Valkyrie, the Morthani, and the Lorians were all species that evolved on bright worlds where their suns never set for long. Darkness was their ancient enemy, the thing their ancestors feared more than death itself. But Elena was human, and humans were different. Everyone listen to me, she said, her voice cutting through the panic like a sharp blade. I need you all to focus. Fear will not save us, but action might. How can you be so calm? Thiessen asked, his glow now almost blinding as his fear response peaked. We are about to enter a place from which nothing returns. Elena moved to stand in the center of the room. She could not see her crew, but she knew they could see her. A dark figure against the faint glow of their bodies. I grew up in darkness, she said. In the tunnels of Europa, we lived our whole lives without natural light. We learned that darkness is not evil. It is just empty space waiting to be filled with whatever we bring to it. Right now we need to bring courage. The ship groaned as metal stressed against the rift's pull. They had maybe 8 minutes left. Chirik, Elena commanded. Forget the main power. Can you get emergency systems online? The engineer's clicking slowed as he focused on the task instead of his fear. Maybe. If I reroute through the backup conduits, I might get basic life support and minimal thrust. Do it, Elena said. Orvex, I need you to calculate our trajectory. If we cannot escape the rift, maybe we can control how we enter it. Control our fall? Orvex asked, his light stabilizing slightly as his scientific mind engaged. That is an interesting idea. If we angle our descent, we might avoid the worst of the gravitational shear. Thiessen, Elena continued. I need you to seal all external hatches and prepare for pressure loss. If the rift tears at our hull, we need to be ready. The diplomat nodded, his glow now a steady pulse instead of a frantic flash. I understand, Commander. I will secure the ship. Elena felt pride in her crew. They were afraid, terrified even, but they were pushing past it. That was all she could ask of anyone. 5 minutes later, Chirrut had restored emergency power. The ship now had weak engines and basic life support. Though communications and sensors remained dead. We cannot escape, Orvex reported. His calculations complete, but I have found an angle of entry that gives us the best chance of survival. There is a 17% chance we will survive the transition. 17%? Thiessen said, those are terrible odds. Elena smiled in the darkness, even though no one could see it. 17% is better than 0. That is enough for me. She took her place in the command chair and gripped the armrests. Around her, the crew strapped themselves in and prepared for what was coming, whatever is on the other side of that rift. Elena said, we will face it together. We are the crew of the Horizon's Edge, and we do not give up. The rift opened before them like a mouth made of shadows, and the ship plunged into absolute darkness. Elena felt reality twist around her, felt her body stretched and compressed at the same time. She heard her crew screaming, and she wanted to scream too, but she held it in because they needed her to be strong, and then, suddenly, everything was still. Elena opened her eyes and saw nothing. Not darkness like she had known before, but true emptiness, a void that seemed to go on forever in every direction. Is everyone alive? She called out one by one. Her crew responded. They had made it through. They were hurt and scared, but they were alive. Where are we? Chirrut asked. Elena looked out at the endless black and felt no fear, only curiosity. This was a new frontier, a place no explorer had ever seen and lived to describe. We are in the abyss, she said, and we are going to find a way out. That is a promise. The ship floated in the void, a tiny spark of life in an ocean of darkness, and Commander Elena Vance began to plan their survival. 3 days had passed since the Horizon's Edge fell into the abyss, and the crew was starting to lose hope. Their food supplies were running low. The air recyclers were working at half power, and worst of all, they had discovered they were not alone in the darkness. Elena stood at the observation window, staring out into the void. There was nothing to see, just endless black that seemed to swallow all light. But she kept watching anyway, because she had learned to trust her instincts. Commander, Orvex said from behind her, his crystalline body giving off a soft glow that reflected off the glass. I have completed my analysis of this dimension. Tell me what you found. Elena replied. The abyss is a pocket between realities, the Lorian scientist explained. It exists outside normal space and time. There is no sun here, no stars, no natural light of any kind. My calculations suggest that nothing should be able to survive in such conditions, and yet something does. Elena said quietly she had seen them in the distance. Shapes moving through the darkness, shadows within shadows. They were hard to spot because they gave off no light, but Elena's eyes were trained to see in low-light conditions, and she had noticed the movements on the first night, the creatures. Thiessen said, floating closer in his mobility suit. His blue glow was dimmer now because he had learned to control it, but it still made him a beacon in the darkness. I have seen them too. They circle the ship like predators waiting for their prey to weaken. Chirrut clicked nervously from his station where he was trying to repair the long-range sensors. My people have legends about such beings. We call them shadow eaters, monsters that feast on those who stray too far from the light. I thought they were just stories to scare children. Every legend has some truth at its core, Elena said, turning to face her crew. These creatures are real, and we need to understand them if we want to survive. As if in response to her words, the ship shuddered. Something had struck the hull from outside. and the impact echoed through the metal like a giant drumbeat. "They are testing us," Elena said. "They want to know how we react. What do we do?" Thiessen asked, his glow brightening with fear before he forced it back down. Elena grabbed a plasma cutter from the tool rack and checked its charge. "We show them that we are not easy prey. Chirik, keep working on those sensors. I want to know everything about these things. Orvex, monitor our power levels and find ways to make our systems run darker and colder. Thiessen, come with me. Where are we going?" The diplomat asked. "Outside," Elena said with a grim smile. "We need to take a closer look at our visitors." The airlock opened with a hiss, and Elena stepped out onto the hull of the ship. She was connected to the vessel by a thin safety cable, but otherwise she was floating free in the void. Thiessen followed close behind. His suit lights turned off to avoid attracting attention. The darkness was absolute. Elena could not see her hand in front of her face, but she could hear things moving around her, soft whispers and scratching sounds that seemed to come from every direction. "There," Thiessen said, pointing with a trembling arm. "I see one." Elena looked and saw what he meant. A shape was moving toward them, darker than the darkness around it. It was large, maybe 3 times the size of a human, with long limbs that ended in sharp points. It had no eyes that Elena could see, but she felt it watching her with something beyond sight. The creature lunged. Elena did not run. She did not scream. She raised her plasma cutter and fired a burst of superheated energy directly at the thing's center. The creature shrieked, a sound that was less heard and more felt, like ice forming in the bones. It pulled back, confused and angry, and Elena saw something in its movements that gave her hope. It did not expect that. She said to Thiessen, "It is used to prey that runs or freezes. It does not know what to do with something that fights back." The creature circled them at a distance, still hungry but now cautious. Elena kept her weapon raised and her eyes fixed on its movement. Beside her, Thiessen was shaking with fear, but he held his position. "You are very brave, Commander," the diplomat said. "I am terrified," Elena admitted. "But fear does not have to control you. It can be a tool, a source of energy and focus. That is something humans learned a long time ago." The creature made another pass, closer this time. Elena fired again, and again the thing retreated with a howl of pain and frustration. They feed on fear. Elena realized suddenly, look at how it reacts. It is drawn to your glow, Thiessen, because your light is connected to your emotions. When you are afraid, you shine brighter, and that attracts them. Then we are doomed, Thiessen said. My species cannot control our bioluminescence. It is automatic. No, Elena said firmly. You can learn. Humans do not glow, but we have other fear responses. Fast heartbeat, rapid breathing, sweating. We learn to control those things over thousands of years. You can learn too. They made their way back to the airlock, moving slowly and carefully. The creature followed but kept its distance, wary of Elena and her weapon inside the ship. Elena gathered her crew and shared what she had learned. These things hunt fear, she explained. They see it somehow, maybe through our light, maybe through something else, but they are not invincible. When I fought back, the creature was confused. It hesitated. You are saying we need to become predators ourselves? Chirik asked. Not predators, Elena said. Survivors. We need to stop acting like prey. We need to stop running and hiding and waiting for death. We need to take control of our situation. Orvex's crystal body flickered thoughtfully. In all my studies, I never understood why humans were considered so ordinary by the Galactic Concord. Your bodies are weak. You have no natural weapons, no armor, no special senses. But now I begin to see the truth. What truth? Thiessen asked. Humans evolved as persistence hunters. Orvex explained. They did not chase their prey with speed. They followed it for hours, for days, wearing it down until it collapsed from exhaustion. They survived ice ages and plagues and wars. They endured when other species would have perished. Their gift is not strength or speed. It is the refusal to give up. Elena nodded, feeling proud and humble at the same time. That is exactly right. And now I am going to teach all of you how to do the same thing. We are going to survive the abyss, not by running from the darkness, but by becoming part of it. Outside the ship, the creatures gathered and waited. They had never encountered prey like this before, and they were curious. But curiosity was dangerous when dealing with humans, because humans had a way of turning every situation to their advantage. The hunt was about to change direction. Elena stood in the cargo bay, watching her crew practice the breathing exercises she had taught them. It had been 5 days since their first encounter with the creatures, and in that time everything had changed. "Slow your breath," she said calmly. "In through the nose, out through the mouth. Feel your heartbeat slow. Feel your light dim." Thiessen floated in the center of the room, his eyes closed and his body still. The blue glow that usually surrounded him was now barely visible, just a faint shimmer that could easily be missed in the darkness. "I'm doing it," he said with wonder in his voice. "I can feel the light fading. I never thought this was possible." "Your species told themselves they could not control their glow," Elena explained. "But that was a lie they believed because they never had to learn. Now you have a reason and the impossible becomes possible." Chirrut was having more trouble. His insectoid body clicked and buzzed with nervous energy that was hard to suppress, but even he was making progress. "The fear is still there," the engineer admitted, "but it does not control me like it did before. I can think clearly even when I am afraid. That is all I ask," Elena said. "Fear is natural. It kept your ancestors alive. But you do not have to let it make your decisions for you." Orvex approached with data on his crystalline display. "Commander, I have finished analyzing the creatures. I am calling them Vorath, based on an old Lorian word for shadow hunter." "What did you learn?" Elena asked. "The Vorath are ancient," Orvex explained, "perhaps as old as the abyss itself. They have no physical form as we understand it. They are made of something between matter and energy, which is why they can exist in this void where normal life cannot survive." "How do they hunt?" Elena pressed. "They sense fear through multiple channels. Bioluminescence, body heat, chemical signals, and something else I cannot quite identify. When prey is afraid, it broadcasts on all these channels at once, making it easy to locate and track." Elena nodded. This matched what she had observed. "And when prey is not afraid, then the Vorath become confused," Orvex said. "They can still sense physical presence, but without fear to guide them, their hunting becomes inefficient. They hesitate, they circle, they wait. This gives calm prey a significant advantage. Then our training is working," Elena said with satisfaction. "We are becoming harder to hunt." Over the next few days, Elena pushed her crew further. She taught them to move silently through the ship, to work in complete darkness using only touch and memory, to communicate with hand signals and quiet clicks instead of speech. She also taught them something more important: how to fight back. The Vorath are predators, she explained during one training session. They expect prey to run or hide. When something attacks them, they do not know how to respond. That moment of confusion is our weapon. Chirrut had modified their plasma cutters to run on minimal power, producing less light and heat while still delivering a painful shock to any Vorath that came too close. "I have also built these," the engineer said proudly, holding up a collection of small devices, motion sensors that detect Vorath movement without using any light. "We can set them up around the ship as an early warning system." "Excellent work," Elena said. "Genuinely impressive," Thesson had discovered something important about the Varith as well. They communicate with each other somehow. When you hurt one, the others learn about it. They are becoming more cautious around us. That means they can learn fear, Elena realized. They have been the hunters for so long that they forgot what it feels like to be hunted. We can remind them. She began sending small teams outside the ship to set traps. Simple devices that would activate when a Varith approached, delivering bright flashes of light and bursts of heat that caused the creatures pain without killing them. The first trap caught a Varith the very next day. The creature's scream echoed through the void, and its companions scattered in confusion. For the first time since entering the abyss, Elena saw the shadows retreat. They are afraid of us now, Orvex observed with amazement. I never thought I would see such a thing. Fear works both ways, Elena said. Predators are only confident when they believe they are in control. Take that control away, and they become just as vulnerable as anyone else. The crew's confidence grew with each small victory. They were no longer helpless victims waiting to die. They were survivors, adapting to their environment and finding ways to thrive. But Elena knew they could not stay in the abyss forever. Their supplies were running low, and the ship's systems were slowly failing. They needed to find a way out. I have been studying the energy patterns in this dimension, Orvex reported one evening. There is a concentration of power at what appears to be the center of the abyss. All the Varith seem to originate from that location. What do you think is there? Elena asked. I cannot be certain, the scientist admitted, but my theory is that the abyss is not a natural phenomenon. It was created by something, and that something is still here, at the heart of all this darkness. Then that is where we need to go. Elena decided her crew looked at her with a mixture of trust and fear. They had come so far, learned so much, but the idea of going deeper into the abyss was terrifying. I know what I'm asking, Elena said. We could stay here, hide in our ship, and hope for rescue that will never come. Or we can take action, find whatever is at the center of this place, and either destroy it or use it to escape. Those are our only options. Thesson asked. In my experience, there are always only two options, Elena replied. Give up or keep fighting. I know which one I choose. But I will not force any of you to come with me. One by one, her crew stepped forward. Chirik with his tools ready, Orvex with his data, and Thesson with his newfound courage. They had been transformed by their time in the abyss, shaped by Elena's teachings into something stronger than they had ever been before. We will follow you, Commander, Chirik said, speaking for all of them. You taught us how to survive. Now teach us how to win. Elena felt a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with temperature. These aliens, so different from her in every physical way, had become her family. She would die before she let them down. Then let us prepare, she said. We are going to the heart of the abyss. And we are going to show whatever lives there exactly what happens when you try to hunt humans. The ship hummed to life, its weak engines pushing against the void as they began their journey toward the center of the darkness. Around them, the Varith watched and followed, curious about these strange creatures that refused to behave like prey. They did not understand yet that they were no longer the hunters. They were about to become the hunted. The journey to the center of the abyss took 7 days, and with each passing hour, the darkness grew heavier. Elena could feel it pressing against the ship like deep water. Thick and cold and hungry. We are approaching the coordinates, Orvex announced from his station. His crystalline body dimmed to avoid attracting Varith. I am detecting massive energy readings ahead. Elena moved to the observation window and stared into the void. At first, she saw nothing, but then, slowly shapes began to emerge from the darkness. Are those ships? Thesson asked with horror in his voice. They were ships. Hundreds of them, perhaps thousands, floating dead in the void. Vessels of every size and design, from species Elena recognized and many she did not. They formed a graveyard that stretched as far as she could see. The rift has been pulling things in for a very long time, Chirrut said quietly. These are all the ships that came before us. None of them survived, Thiessen added, his glow flickering despite his training. None of them had a human leading them, Elena said firmly. We are different. Remember then. She guided the horizon's edge through the wreckage, careful to avoid collisions with the drifting hulks. Inside many of the ships she could see skeletons, the remains of crews who had died of starvation or fear or worse. What killed them? Chirrut wondered aloud. The Vorath fed on them, Orvex explained. I can see the marks. The creatures did not just hunt them physically. They drained something vital, something connected to their life force. The fear response must trigger a chemical release that the Vorath consume, so they literally eat fear, Elena said. That explains why they are so aggressive. They are always hungry. At the very center of the graveyard, surrounded by a ring of the largest ships, floated something that made Elena's heart stop. It was alive. Massive and pulsing with dark energy, it hung in the void like a malevolent heart. Tendrils of shadow extended from its surface, reaching out toward the dead ships and the living Vorath that circled it. It had no face, no eyes, but Elena felt it looking at her, studying her, trying to understand what she was. The Maw, Orvex whispered. That is what created the abyss. That is what creates the Vorath. It is the source of everything. What is it? Elena asked. I do not know, the scientist admitted. Something ancient, perhaps from before the universe itself. It exists outside normal reality, feeding on the fear of beings it traps in its dimension. The Vorath are extensions of its will, hunters that bring it prey. As they watched, a Vorath approached the Maw and was absorbed into its surface. A moment later, 2 Vorath emerged, newly born and hungry. It is reproducing, Chirrut said with disgust. Using fear as fuel to make more hunters. Commander, Thiessen said suddenly, his voice strange. Something is trying to communicate with me. Elena turned to see the diplomat floating rigidly, his eyes unfocused and his glow pulsing in patterns she had never seen before. The Maw is speaking to me, Thiessen continued, his voice now layered with something deeper and darker. It says it has been watching us. It says we are different from the others. It says it wants to make a deal. What kind of deal? Elena demanded. Thiessen's mouth moved, but the words came from somewhere else. Leave behind your crew and you may go free, human. You have proven yourself worthy of survival. Your fear is small, but your will is strong. I have use for such beings. Elena felt cold anger building in her chest. And what happens to my crew if I accept? They will feed me, the Maw said through Thiessen. Their fear is delicious. The insect's ancient terror of darkness, the crystal's fear of shattering, the fish's terror of deep water. I will consume them slowly, savoring every moment. Elena stepped closer to Thiessen, looking directly into his glazed eyes as if she could see them all behind them. Let me tell you something about humans. We do not abandon our own. We do not make deals with monsters. And we do not negotiate with things that are afraid of us. I am not afraid, the Maw laughed. I am the eater of fear. I am the darkness that you are afraid, Elena interrupted. That is why you are making this offer. You have been watching us, and you have seen how we fight. You have felt your Vorath die. You know we are dangerous, and that scares you. For the first time in your ancient existence, something has entered your realm that might be able to hurt you. The Maw was silent for a long moment. Then Thiessen collapsed as the connection was severed. Elena caught him before he could drift away. Commander, the diplomat gasped, returning to himself. That thing. It is so old, so powerful. It has consumed millions of beings. How can we possibly defeat it? Elena helped these into a seat and looked around at her crew. They were all watching her, waiting for guidance, trusting her to find a way. "We do not need to defeat it," she said slowly, an idea forming in her mind. "We just need to escape it. And I think I know how." She turned to Orvex. "You said the maw exists outside normal reality. That means it is anchored here somehow, connected to the abyss in a specific way." "Correct." Orvex nodded. "It seems to be both the creator and the prisoner of this dimension. It cannot leave, which is why it sends the Vorth to hunt for it. What would happen if we destabilize that anchor?" Elena asked Orvex's crystal body flickered rapidly as he processed the question. "Theoretically, it would create a rupture in the dimensional barrier, a doorway back to normal space, and the maw would be trapped here, unable to follow. Or it might be destroyed entirely. There is no way to know for certain." Elena smiled grimly. "Then that is our plan. We are going to hurt the maw so badly that it tears a hole in reality, and we are going to fly through that hole before it closes." "That is insane," Chirrut said. "Do you have a better idea?" Elena asked. The engineer clicked his mandibles thoughtfully, then shook his head. "No. Insane is all we have left." "Then let us get to work," Elena commanded. "We have a god to wound and a dimension to crack open. I want plans, options, and weapons. We have maybe 2 days before the maw decides to stop talking and start attacking." Her crew scattered to their stations, each focusing on their part of the impossible task. Elena remained at the window, staring at the pulsing darkness of the maw. "You made a mistake," she said quietly, knowing somehow that it could hear her. "You should have killed us the moment we arrived. But you were curious. You wanted to understand. That hesitation is going to cost you everything." The maw pulsed once, as if in response, and Elena felt its attention focus on her with new intensity. The final battle was coming, and humanity would show this ancient horror exactly why the galaxy would one day learn to fear the small, stubborn creatures from the third planet of an unremarkable sun. The plan was simple in concept, but nearly impossible in execution. They would use the salvaged reactors from the dead ships around them to create a massive explosion of light and energy, blinding the maw and disrupting its control over the abyss. "I have connected 14 reactors in a chain," Chirrut reported, his forearms moving with practiced efficiency. "When they detonate, they will produce more light than a small star for approximately 3 seconds. Will that be enough to hurt the maw?" Elena asked. "Not physically," Orvex explained, "but it will overload its sensory systems. The maw has existed in darkness for so long that intense light will cause it tremendous pain and confusion. During that moment, we must strike at its dimensional anchor." Thiessen had been studying the maw's structure and had identified a weak point. There is a place near its center where the energy concentrations are highest. If we can penetrate that point, we might be able to destabilize the whole entity. "How do we penetrate it?" Elena asked. "Someone will need to go inside," Thiessen said reluctantly, carrying a plasma core set to overload. "The explosion from inside should be enough to crack its anchor." The crew fell silent. Everyone understood what that meant. Whoever carried the plasma core would not be coming back. "I will do it," Elena said immediately. "No," Chirrut clicked firmly. "You are our commander. Without you, we would have died in the first hour. You must guide the ship through the rupture when it opens." "I will go," Thiessen offered. "My mobility suit can navigate in ways the rest of you cannot. I can reach the center fastest. Your species cannot handle the radiation from an overloading plasma core," Orvex pointed out. "You would die before you reach the target. Then I will carry the core," the Lorian scientist said. "My crystalline body can absorb radiation better than organic tissue. I might survive long enough to complete the mission." Elena shook her head. "I cannot ask any of you to die for this." "You are not asking," Chirrut said. "We are offering." That is the difference. You taught us that survival is not just about living. It is about living for something. We choose to live for each other, and if necessary, we choose to die for each other too. Tears formed in Elena's eyes, but she blinked them away. There was no time for grief yet, Orvex, she said, her voice thick. Are you certain about this? I have never been more certain of anything, DeLorean replied, his crystal body glowing with inner peace. My people believe that when we shatter, our light returns to the universe. I would rather shatter fighting than fade away hiding. Elena embraced him, feeling the cool smoothness of his crystalline surface against her skin. You are the bravest person I have ever known. I learned from the best. Orvex replied. They made their final preparations in silence. Elena ran through the plan one more time, making sure everyone knew their role. When the reactors exploded, Orvex would launch himself toward the maw. Chirrut would pilot the ship toward the anticipated rupture point. Thiessen would monitor for the dimensional tier, and Elena would make sure they all made it through. It is time, Elena announced. The crew took their positions. Orvex moved to the airlock, the plasma core strapped to his back. He looked back at his friends one last time. Thank you, he said, for showing me what courage truly looks like. Then he was gone, drifting toward the maw with determination in every facet of his crystalline form. Elena watched him go, then turned to Chirrut. On my signal, detonate the reactors. Devara sensed something was happening. They began to swarm toward the ship, hundreds of them, maybe thousands, more than Elena had ever seen before. The maw is sending everything it has, Thiessen reported. It knows we are planning something. Hold steady, Elena ordered. Wait for Orvex to get close enough. Devara struck the ship like a dark wave. Elena heard metal tearing and alarms screaming. The creatures were trying to rip them apart before they could act. Shields failing. Chirrut shouted, We cannot take much more of this. Elena watched Orvex's signal on her screen. He was almost in position. Just a few more seconds. Now, she commanded. Detonate. The darkness shattered. 14 reactors exploded in perfect sequence. And for one glorious moment, the abyss was filled with light. It was not sunlight or starlight, but something pure. Something that had not existed in this dimension since its creation. Devara screamed and scattered. The maw convulsed with agony, its dark surface rippling like water in a storm, and Orvex flew straight into its heart. Elena saw his signal disappear inside the massive entity. For a terrible moment, she thought he had failed. Then a new light appeared, brighter and more violent than the reactors, growing from within the maw itself. He did it, Thiessen shouted. The anchor is destabilizing. The maw screamed. It was a sound that existed beyond hearing, a vibration that Elena felt in her bones and in her soul. Reality itself began to crack around the wounded entity. There, Elena pointed at a tear forming in the void. A jagged line of light that showed glimpses of stars and normal space beyond. Head for that opening. Chirrut pushed the engines beyond their limits, and the horizon's edge surged forward. Behind them, the abyss was collapsing, the maw's dying throes pulling everything toward it like a whirlpool. Vorth grabbed at the ship, trying to drag it back, but they were weakened and confused. Elena and Thiessen fought them off with plasma cutters and makeshift weapons, driving them away from the hull. The rupture is closing, Thiessen warned. We need more speed. Diverting all power to engines, Chirrut responded. Life support is offline. We have maybe 3 minutes of air. Elena did not hesitate. Do it? 3 minutes is enough. The ship accelerated, metal groaning under the stress. The tier in reality was getting smaller, the edges beginning to heal as the maw's influence faded. We are not going to make it, Chirrut said. Yes, we are, Elena replied. And she meant it with every fiber of her being. She ran to the engine room and found the manual override. It was a desperate measure, designed only for emergencies. That would burn out the engines completely, but provide one final burst of power. She pulled the lever. The horizon's edge shot forward like a bullet. Elena was thrown against the wall, pain exploding through her shoulder. She heard her crew crying out, felt the ship shaking like it was going to tear itself apart, and then they were through. Light surrounded them. Real light, from real stars in real space. The darkness of the abyss was behind them, visible now as a shrinking wound in reality that sealed itself shut with a final pulse of energy. We made it. Thiessen gasped. We actually made it. Chirrut was laughing and clicking at the same time, relief pouring through his insectoid body. The engines are destroyed, but we are alive. We are alive. Elena pulled herself up, cradling her injured arm, and looked out at the stars. She had never seen anything so beautiful. Orvex, she said quietly. He saved us all. The crew fell silent, remembering their fallen friend. He had given everything so they could have this moment of triumph. His light returns to the universe, Thiessen said softly, using the Lorian phrase Orvex had taught them. And his courage lives on in us. 3 days later, a patrol ship from the Galactic Concord found them drifting near the now sealed Korath Rift. The crew was dehydrated and exhausted, but alive when the Concord officials asked how they had survived where hundreds of expeditions had failed. Thiessen stepped forward to answer. We had a human with us, he said simply. She taught us that darkness is not something to fear. It is just a challenge to overcome. She showed us that survival is not about being the strongest or the fastest. It is about refusing to give up, no matter what. The officials looked at Elena with new respect, seeing not just a human, but a symbol of something greater. What will you do now? They asked her. Elena looked at her crew, her family, and smiled despite the grief in her heart. We are going to go home, rest, and heal. And then we are going to find another impossible mission. Because that is what humans do. We survive, we adapt, and we keep pushing forward. The universe is full of darkness, and someone needs to bring the light. The horizon's edge was towed back to port, battered and broken, but victorious. News of their survival spread across the galaxy, and for the first time, other species began to understand why humans were truly special. They were not the strongest or the smartest or the most advanced. They were simply the ones who never, ever gave up.